by Bram van Vliet, Qumulo Benelux Sales Managers. Hi, Bram. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Enrico, and thank you very much for the opportunity. And yeah, pleasure to be here.
So next slide, please. And next, because probably I forgot to say the first next, we are on the agenda. So today we will talk about why scale out, first of all, and we will go through all my latest report about the key criteria for evaluating scale out stories. So we will talk about evaluation metrics. We will give you also some indication on what is table stakes when we do this kind of evaluation. So what really is no longer important because it's common to all the platforms. And then we will we go through the key criteria, so the very core of this evaluation. And at the end, we will also give you a couple of hints about what is going to happen in the next 12, 18 months. And also a very brief indication on how to put in context the key criteria with the evaluation metrics. So without any further ado, let's start with the first slide. Before starting, in fact, I want to talk about why scale out. What is the difference between scale up and scale out? The reality is that scale up for the kind of data, the kind of data growth that we are seeing is just limited. Usually you have this architecture based on a couple of controllers on the front end, a number of front end ports, and in the back end you have a set of disks, or now more commonly flash devices. The problem with this approach is that when you reach the limit of this architecture, the only thing that you can do is to change the controller, for example, which in many cases also brings all sorts of service disruptions, because the migration, because the fact that some of these controllers have to be stopped before adding something new, and at certain times there is a total limit of the platform that we reach, and we have to purchase a second system and start to manage in two systems. When the numbers become very big, we find that several systems are added to the same infrastructure, and they are all different islands to manage, to back up, to do everything. So the operations are pretty expensive. In a scale-out architecture, you have a standard, or almost a standard configuration that usually is a server with a bunch of disks. So it's a node in a cluster. Sorry. And what we do is to add additional nodes to expand both capacity, performance, and everything. So this is now a common architecture. So next slides, please. So if we want to do this quick reality check about scale up versus scale out, we will find out that when we scale up is all about having a simple architecture. So as we said, two controllers, a bunch of disks in the backend. It's very easy. Next, and it's very easy to manage. So it's we are used to filers that are appliances, and even a not really skilled sysadmin can add a new user, so can configure new volumes and things like that. And also the other problem is the limited scalability. Okay, next please. So when we think about scale out architectures, actually we have a complex architecture, but now in the latest iteration of this scale out design, most of the complexity is hidden to the user. So we don't see, like in the past, all the connectivity, all the security, all the layout or metadata management and any other, of these things, everything is hidden behind the scenes, so the user can't see any of it. And also, it's easier to manage at scale. So if we think about having multiple systems to manage in a scale-up fashion, actually, when we have multiple nodes, they are part of a single cluster and can scale up to the multi-petabyte levels, and it's a single system. So when you apply policies, they are the same for all the system, backup policies, and so on. So you do things once. So you have less overhead and also less people managing the system at the end of the day. And also, last but not least, unlimited scalability. Well, I'm take this with a grain of salt, of course. It's not unlimited for everybody, but actually we are talking about unlimited for most enterprises. So we are talking about multi-petabyte system usually. Bram, I don't know if you want to add something here, and what's your point of view about the difference between scale up and scale out, and what is the approach of Qumulo?
Well, let's say, yeah, it's an interesting topic because many of customers are, because of the scale-up technology is already 10 to 15 years old, and will remain and stay there for many more years. The thing is, with scale-up and scale-out, there's a need to do more with the same storage solution. So I think what you just described are true valid topics for many customers, and the question is how to do it. So and that's also why Qumulo built a scale-out solution, which is more modern and also try to simplify the architecture, which comes close to cloud as a consumption piece, but also from a manageability perspective is much easier to handle.
Fantastic. So let's go to the next slide and start talking about evaluation metrics. When I think about evaluation metrics, I think about for example, when you're buying a new car. Okay, when you go to the car seller, what you look for is high level metrics, like for example, comfort or performance or safety. Okay, so this is what is really important for you, and then you evaluate the details of the car, okay, the features of the car, and you put them in context to see if something is really interesting or has an impact on these evaluation metrics. So what are the evaluation metrics when we talk about scale out systems? So what do you start to evaluate? Of course, we start with important metrics that can be next license please. So scalability, for example. Okay, the first thing that you want to do is to have a scale-out system that is really scalable. Today, scalability is not only the size of the cluster or linear scalability in terms of performance, but actually the capacity, the ability to scale also to the cloud. So taking advantage of cloud resources to expand your system. Another important aspect in the next slide is flexibility. Flexibility is something that everybody wants today because, think about COVID, for example. Think about the situation we are living. Things change dramatically fast today. You have to respond quickly to new business needs. So you want a flexible system that you want to be able to change the configuration. Today you are talking about capacity. Tomorrow you may need a big data project to serve, and then you need more flexibility in the system that can respond to several workloads, for example. It can change the configuration quickly if necessary. Another aspect in the next bullet point is performance. Okay, performance is another aspect that everybody asks for, because when you start consolidating several workloads in the same system, and one of the advantages of a scale out is the fact that you can consolidate it more, as we said multiple times, you need performance. Performance has several metrics, okay, IOPS, latency, throughput. So all of them are important depending on the workloads, of course. And then we have other metrics. In the next bullet point, we have system lifespan. Okay, and system lifespan is important because we think about storage differently now. So if you have a scale-up system and you start thinking about the life of this system, you may sorry, you may think about a 3 years lifespan. Well, first of all, 3 years is never true. So when you purchase a new system, you think about 3 years because this is the standard contract that most of the vendors gives you as on top of the hardware. But actually, the life of the system in many that enterprise data center is longer. Sometimes it's 5 years. In other cases, I found 7 years old systems. And this new system becomes very expensive to manage after the 3 years. So the contracts are becoming expensive. Sometimes it's easier to buy a new system than maintain old hardware and so on. In a scale-out approach, things are totally different because these systems are really huge sometimes. So you don't think about migrating a multi-petabyte system. So it's an evolutive approach. You want to be sure that you can mix, for example, systems of different generations. So in 2 years from now, you will have a better node with more capacity, with more flash memory, probably with better characteristics in general. So you want to mix different generation of the system. You want to be sure that the system goes for a long time. You want to decommission all nodes without disrupting service and things like that. So these are all important for the life of the system. That again becomes bigger, and you don't want a disruption of the server at any time. And then to the next slide, we have usability. Okay, so the system has to be simple, easy to manage from everybody in your organization. Okay, so you want the same kind of interface that you have on a scale-up system first, but actually it's not only that. We talk usually about APIs, we talk about several other factors, but actually because these systems are big, sometimes huge, you want to have dashboards, you want to understand what is really happening in the system to help you to do better your job. And in the next point, last but not least, TCO. Usually TCO and ROI are very difficult to calculate. I mean, especially TCO, it really depends on the characteristic of the organization, where the systems are installed, and so on. But actually, I have to say that in my experience, when you find a very well-balanced systems, then this kind of system can give usually a very good TCO because you have all the characteristics that we described in the previous bullet points, summed in the TCO. So if it's good, if it has a good usability, a good system lifespan, performance, flexibility, and scalability, you can expect to have a good TCO as well. Bram, this was a very long discussion in this slide. I don't know what you see in the field from your customers, from your experience with Qumulo.
Well, I do agree with the evaluation criteria, and I think if you would triangulate the most three important ones, scalability, flexibility, and performance, those are the ones who suffers the most with many legacy technologies, and also confirmed by many customers. So many of our customers would agree that today's technology should be able to deliver more value on all aspects at the same time, and not only focus on one of the dimensions. So we believe at Qumulo that a modern solution should be deliver on all values, and not only on premise, but also this extended experience to the cloud. So deliver the same or better value. So yeah, I think that's what we currently see.
Fantastic. And let's go to the next slide. So let's start to talk about the key criteria. What really makes a difference for your system? But next slide, please. First of all, I want to talk about table stakes. I want to talk about what doesn't really make a difference. So every scale-out file storage should do this. And there are a couple of things that are really, common to all scale-out file storage. Next point, please. So first of all, you want to have a broad range of file protocols, but it's really common today to have support for different flavors of SMB and NFS, for example, or having the front end, other protocols like HTTP or even FTP in some cases. Okay, this is not really a huge differentiator anymore. In the past, we had a lot of differences between protocol implementations, the quality of integration with Active Directory, for example, and things like that. This is no longer the case. This is no longer a differentiator anymore. Next, please. And data services is another aspect that, yes, it's important for the day-to-day operations, but actually everybody does a snapshot, for example. And the snapshot are for almost all the vendors now something that is less impactful on the original volume in terms of performance, because everybody works with redirect and write kind of snapshots, no more copy and write and things like that. Also, remote replication is something that is available practically from everybody. So yes, there are minor differences, but it is not something that will impact the TCO of the system at the end of the day. And there is another aspect in the next point, that is flexible licensing and support. All the vendors are trying to find ways to please their customers from this point of view. I mean, all the customers are now looking for ways to minimize the impact of new hardware on their systems, and they want subscriptions also for the hardware. They want somehow to mimic the cloud model, okay, in a pay-as-you-go fashion. But in other cases, we are still with a very traditional purchasing process where you buy your asset and there is an amortization that goes through the years. So every vendor now has flexible licensing options. So it's not really something that we should spend too much time on it. So in the next slide, and the other thing is that the vast majority of architecture available in the market is based on a two-tier architecture. Okay, so you have a fast tier and a capacity tier. They are well integrated. You can have automatic tiering, you can have caching mechanisms, but at the end of the day, even if they are implemented differently by the vendors, the result is the same. It's a combination of performance and capacity. And then we can talk about this combination of performance capacity, and also add on top of it that there are additional tiers like the cloud and so on. But actually, this is the core of the discussion, and this is something that is at the base of every system. In the next slide, we will start talking about the real key criteria for evaluating storage. So first of all, integration with object storage, file and objects. Okay, so why this is important? Actually, there is a mistake in a slide. It's SM3 is SMB actually, but we talk about NFS and SMB at the front end, but actually S3 is becoming very relevant to all organizations. There are several reasons for that. So your backup solution is already compatible with S3, for example, or your archiving application or many other applications that are available now in the market use S3 as a protocol to store data. Think about Splunk, for example. For Splunk, it's becoming more and more relevant. For big data workloads in general, it's relevant. So you want to add this protocol on the front end. But actually, there is also a discussion on the back end. Okay, so there are cloud storage that can be of help to expand the capacity. And this cloud storage could be both on premises as well as in the cloud. Of course, it changes the dollar per gigabyte, okay, and it could be for some workloads or other workloads, and there are different ways to use this storage. So it could be a copy, like a backup copy. It could be used to offload snapshots, or it can be used for disaster recovery reason. There are several options here, but actually it's becoming really relevant. So, Bram, what is your position about S3 from the Qumulo perspective?
Well, yes, we see an increased adoption of S3 as a viable option or a use case for many organizations to store data in the public cloud or on-premise or both. And especially in this era where organizations are accelerating digital business initiatives. And that's also the reason why we have developed a more robust solution, which is called Shift, by the way, where customers can benefit from a modern scale-out storage solution, which in most cases will be based on premise, and extend this to all public cloud providers within one single namespace. And in the latest edition of Shift, we enable customers to transfile data to AWS S3 buckets without any complexity. So the users are getting the same experience and having the benefits of both of the file and the object worlds in one single solution. And instead of having single tier of different tiers or different kind of solutions, we try to get it all in one solution.
And that leads the discussion to the next point, integration with the public cloud. Okay, so you mentioned Amazon S3, but actually in this slide we are talking about the fact that you want to keep a consistent experience between different environments, and these environments are the public cloud and your on-premises infrastructure. So you want to keep it consistent, you want the performance, you want it easy in terms of management. So the first important point in this slide is managed services of virtual appliances. I mean, many vendors are working with public cloud providers to provide in their marketplaces a solution that resembles what you got in your private data center. So you can go to the marketplace, you select the several options that are available, and in a few minutes you can get your cluster deployed. So you have the same identical solution, and maybe you can use it for a few minutes or for a few hours to run a big data workload. As Bram mentioned, there are mechanisms to advantage of this. Another important thing is that you don't want it with one cloud. Even if you are using one cloud today, there is, a need for many organizations now to think about multiple cloud. I was in a conversation with one of my clients a few days ago, and they told me, well, we are Amazon only, but 30% of our data is on Google. Okay, and so think about it. I mean, they didn't decide to go on Google, but actually one of their partners provide the service on Google. So now they have Amazon and Google, even if their application their infrastructure theoretically is all on Amazon. So you want to be ready to support multiple clients in your future IT. And the other part is, as we talked already, the fact that because you use S3 as a backend for several things, including tiering, including archiving, including snapshot offloading, including as a target for replication in other cases, you want to be able to rehydrate your data. So you offload your data from your primary system, you put it in the cloud, but actually maybe in the future you will need to retrieve this data, maybe for disaster recovery, for example. So you need mechanisms to move data around. And this leads to the last point of this slide, which is data import, export, and synchronization. And again, you want to be sure that you have the right tools to move data around. So from on-premises, maybe it's data replication mechanism, but in other cases, it's an export capability or an import capability. Like you want to create a scale-out system that is ephemeral. So just for the time you need it to run a big data workload. What do? If you have your data on S3, and maybe just because S3 is easy to reach across the internet, it's based on HTTP at the end of the day, so you have multiple sensors writing data to S3. How do you import this data to your scale-out file storage, which provides performance and easy access to your big data application? Actually, you need this kind of tool. So this is something that is really important. So, Bram, what is, you already mentioned Shift as an option for your customers. Actually, you have a complete cloud strategy for Qumulo. Maybe you want to spend a couple of words around it.
Yeah, and I think this is a very important topic, especially if you look at the scale-out systems. And also, I think a great differentiation with scale-up, which is limited, by the way, going in this dimension. We believe at Qumulo is that the time that the solution just lives in a box is we already passed that time frame. So we believe that a modern scale-out file system should not only scale on premise but also in the cloud, and also is not limited to the one single cloud provider. So that is why let's say a lot of customers are coming from application-centric will become more data-driven or data-centric, and wants to move data across any platform, any device, any applications whenever they need it. And that's also one of the reasons why I created this solution, to be literally unlimited, not only on the performance scale but also on the data services scale. To build solutions which customers has demand for. And I think, looking forward, I think that's the only way to go forward, to be very flexible and have a flexible data layer, especially around file data and cloud, that you have one single solution.
Yeah. So, next slide, and we talk about new flash memory devices here. So, not all flash technologies are identical. There are a lot of innovations in this area lately, and both at the end of the spectrum. So first of all, in the first bullet point of this slide, we talk about dollar per gigabyte latency, throughput, and IOPS. These are all metrics that are fundamental to define a storage system. And when we talk about flash memory, okay, at the very beginning, it was all about performance, pure performance, very expensive, so very high dollar per gigabyte. The vendors worked to improve utilization of this media, but actually, the road is still very long. What I can say is that on the performance, there is now NVMe. Next slide, please. So an NVMe is a protocol that removes most of the limitation of legacy protocols, like SCSI, for example. So it shortens the data path and also make it more parallel. So more I/O and can be more operation can be done concurrently, making the latency very, very low. Many vendors are adopting NVMe in the backend in their nodes to speed up operation in general, to get less impact on CPUs, for example, and so an overall better performance. But there is something more to this. Next slide. So there is storage class memory now. Intel Optane a few years ago launched this new media. Storage class memory, and in particular Intel Optane in this case, is something that is in between RAM and flash memory. It's faster than flash memory and can be persistent as RAM. Of course, the price is higher than flash memory, but again, it feels right in the perfect place when you have to deal with non-volatile memory operations. So many vendors are adopting this technology because allow them to remove non-standard components. So we are going to a standardization of some of the non-volatile components that are necessary to keep consistency, even if there is a crash of a system and things like that, better cache management, and so on. But on the other side of the spectrum, next slide, please, we have QLC NAND. Okay, QLC is, without going too much into detail here because we don't have time, it's an evolution of flash memory that brings a lot of capacity. Unfortunately, this evolution also brings less endurance. So we have a QLC NAND chip that can endure no more than usually 1,000 write cycles. This is a problem for if it's not managed well. But the combination of the right algorithms with the storage class memory in the front end and maybe other flash devices in the same system allows to bring the dollar per gigabyte very, very low. Okay. Of course, we are at the beginning of this journey. Okay. So these both QLC NAND and storage class memory are really new, but it's important to evaluate systems that can do that. I mean, that are designed to implement this kind of technologies. Bram, what does Qumulo does in terms of flash memory adoption, new technology in general, when it comes to your systems?
Well, a modern file solution should easily adapt and support any technology. So even technologies which will become available in the near future. So and we are already prepared for this, as we provide a software-defined solution based on the Tier 2 model. So we will adopt the new standards based on customer demand. In short, we are ready for it.
Great. And in the next slide, we talk about system management. System management, as we are used to, I mean, in many organizations, is all about user interface. But actually, APIs are very important when you start to think about scale of the infrastructure, and you want more and more automation and even more. So all the vendors are working more than in the past in building intelligent systems that can understand better what is happening in the system. So more analytics, more insights of what is actually happening in the system. There is also a trend to move some of this data on a big data lake and make additional analysis. So this means that your system, not your data of course, but your system, so the sensor of your system are sent to the cloud and are compared to the others. This means that you have additional insight. Look, your system is going to be full in 3 months because every time we see this kind of workloads, we saw that your system is going to fill up in this way. This is very useful because you get additional information over time, and it's also useful because you can report with facts to the executives of the company about the state of the system and where it is going in the near future. So, Bram, I know that Qumulo has some important features in this area, right?
Yeah. So the core of the Qumulo solution was built on the fundament of providing real-time analytics from day one. And customers want to curate data anytime, any place, and anywhere. And many of our customers have to provide the business more accurate data on usage or on performance or access of all kinds of reasons. And I think we did pretty well in this area to have a solution that provides meta-level information that can be very easily accessed or integrated in specialized industry standard solutions like Splunk or Elasticsearch, just to name some. But in general, it can be integrated in any solution due to its open API framework. So I think we have a robust and a very good solution in this area compared to our competitors.
Yeah, and that's bring us to the next slide, data management. Okay, and again, don't be fooled by some vendors that tell you that data management and data services are the same thing, but data management is all about data. Okay, and next, please. There are a growing number of expectations from users, especially from business owners, that is about auditing and security, for example. We have GDPR here in Europe, but actually similar regulations are popping up everywhere around the world. So, and also there are security concerns that are growing. I mean, ransomware attacks, everything about data leaks, data breaches. So you want to understand what is happening in the system. You want to understand who is accessing the system, which kind of partners they are using usually, and maybe analyze this pattern to see if there is some anomalies. Okay, and also next point, compliance. Okay, because we're talking about GDPR, you want to be sure that you're storing the right data in your system, that everything is correctly stored, and so on. You don't want to store, for example, personal data in your system, and there are some solutions that are able to analyze the content of the files to tell you that you are not doing it right. I mean, is the information encrypted? Is it not? And so on. And next point is search. As soon as we start to talk about petabytes managed in a single system, this is a common problem actually, not only for scale-out system. I mean, it's organization-wide. Okay, but search. It's very important today to be able to search data across your system, but in particular, if you have a scale-out system that consolidates a lot of data in a single place, you want to be able to search data and improve productivity, for example, while reproducing the same kind of file when you have multiple copies of it already available, maybe from other teams. And next point is reporting. Okay, you want to provide the right reports to the decision maker in your organization. You want to understand about orphaned data, for example. So people move in your organization, sometimes they leave the organization, and just deleting their profile from Active Directory doesn't delete the data. And who owns the data then? Is the data stored in your system but not used by anybody anymore? So these are all important information, because over time, of course, it impacts capacity, but security and so on. The same goes for dark data. You want to be sure that the right data is installed in your system, that you don't lose control of the data that is installed in your system that you are not aware of. I mean, think about people storing, well, in the past was MP3 files, now it's movies. And the movies are gigabytes and gigabytes of data for each one of them. So you don't want to, your users using enterprise resources for their personal use. So Bram, I don't know. What's your stance of Qumulo on about data management?
Yeah, I think all a big problem for many file solutions, which is heavily tied to performance, is influenced by the topics you mentioned. So when you need quick access to your meta information of your files, it's due to the fact that all the technologies are very hardware bound and not software bound. And I think Qumulo has designed a very good solution, which I already mentioned, built on real-time analytics, in which we can provide all the meta file information which can be adapted to help you out on compliance. For example, if you have to alter or to report something, we can do it in a split second. Also for the searchability of the platform, and yeah, of course, the reporting can be delivered because it's real time and very short time frames. And I think here is a big advantage using the Qumulo file system solution, because basically on this real-time analytics is supportive of many elements, and which can help organizations out on all the topics.
Okay, fantastic. So let's skip to the next slide, emerging technology. Okay, what can you expect from scale-out storage system in the next 12, 18 months? So when you're planning and you start asking to the vendors roadmaps and their development strategy, so what you can expect to earn? I think that there are a couple of technologies that are really interesting at the moment. Next slide, please. So the first point is AIOps. AIOps means artificial intelligence operations, and somehow it looks like scientific fiction, something like that. I mean, sci-fi. But if you start thinking about the fact that many vendors are collecting information from your system, or how they operate, what happens in this system, trends, etc. They are now applying machine learning methodologies to understand this trend, and they are starting to give you indications, okay, on how to apply best practices to tune the system, to optimize performance, to save space, and so on. Well, actually, the next step is to make these suggestions not just suggestion, but actually act directly on the system in a sort of an autopilot mode, and giving you, more and more time to do something else, so that even if the system grows in capacity and you consolidate even more workload, you don't need additional sysadmin to manage the system. This is becoming really relevant, especially because, again, the data growth is something that we are not going to see stopping anytime soon. Actually, it will increase in the amount of data, especially now that we have so many machine-generated kind of data that are stored sometimes forever in our systems. And the other thing, it's about performance. In the next slide, we talk about NVMe over Fabric and NVMe over TCP. So these protocols are actually an evolution of NVMe that we discussed earlier, okay? But instead of having the advantage to talk about, to improve the communication protocol between the CPU and the single device, we are talking about using the same protocol over the network. So that all the communication in the backend of your system are managed with this protocol, which is way faster than what we have today to communicate between the protocol. And also it's more resilient because, again, it provides a better way to access data on a remote location. In this case, data that is on a node sorry, not local, but on a node in the same cluster. So over time, we will see more and more evolutions in the communication intra-cluster. Bram, what is? I know that you can't share too much here. I mean, it's a roadmap, it's the future, but actually, at least at a personal level, what do you see in the field, and what do you see from your customers as demand, or what can you share from Qumulo, please?
Yeah, that's always it's an interesting area. But I can absolutely confirm that a lot of organizations are looking to more robust automation, which is also robotization of workflows. So, everything with this AI for augmented intelligence, intelligent applications, RPI, chat robots, etc., etc. So customers are more interested to automate everything. And as you already mentioned, they're looking less to maintain and operate the solution rather than to automate the solution. And we are developing interesting technology. The platform is already prepared for that. So if you want to have API-driven integrations, our solution is capable of handling that easily. And we see many of our customers going this pathway. As you said, it's early innovation and adoption. And I think there are the financial institutes and some other big areas already started to invest in this area that just have given us a great insights how to develop our future offering. But yeah, let's say it is an interesting move, and we're really prepared for that. And also to mention also on the new technologies, and I think I made already that comment earlier. Our platform is already optimized and ready for adopting the new technology, because that is also the differentiation going forward, being a software-driven solution rather than a hardware-driven solution.
Fantastic. So I have another slide here before going to the Q&A session. How do you put in context the key criteria that we discussed with the metrics that we analyzed at the very beginning? Okay. So in the next slide, there is a table where we usually add to our reports at GigaOm. When we talked at the very beginning about the car, so the process that is in place when you choose a new car. Okay, so again, you go for high-level metrics at the very beginning: comfort, safety, performance. Okay, but if you are interested in performance, okay, what are the features of the car that really impact the performance? For example, if you are looking for performance today, you can look at an electric engine, because it gives you a lot of performance, probably, if you think about the Tesla, okay? But at the same time, the impact is on comfort, because the noise, or on security and safety, because there is no gas involved. The same thing is what we do in this table. So, for example, again, if you look at performance, what is the important key criteria that you evaluate? Well, you evaluate flash memory devices, for example, because this has a direct impact on performance. They are faster of disk, of course, so it's easy. But if you're looking at scalability, what is the most important thing to look at? So if you look at this table, you will see that integration with object storage is the most relevant, because it gives you additional capacity easily, so it improves scalability in general. So this is just to give you an idea that, of course, not all the evaluation are identical for all the companies, but actually putting in context, metrics and criteria will give you the right information to evaluate better your scale-out storage system. So, without any further ado, let's go to the Q&A. We are just at the top of the hour. We started a little bit late. I have a couple of questions that I see here, and maybe Bram has something. But so the first question that I see is about migration. Okay, So how difficult is to migrate from a scale-up to a scale-out file system? Well, I have to say that as every other technology you have in your data center is easier than many years ago. Okay, we are talking about a lot of data here. There are tools that simplify migrations, and of course there are also open source tools that do that, like, for example, rsync. You can keep running rsync for days and days and days until you are ready, and then you just switch, you just stop the system at the last minute, the scale-up system, the decommissioning system at the last minute, and you switch after the last rsync to the new one. Okay, this is the most economic way to do it. I know this is also what you probably have thought to do. There are some sophisticated tools that are, you know, like rsync on steroids, but actually the process is always the same. Okay, so the migration happens in this way. It's not difficult, and it's easy to do. Okay, another question that I read is about what's the impact of object storage in a scale-out system if there is a service interruption? This is a very good question. So if you are thinking about tiering and you don't have the connection with the object store in the backend, so if the storage is in the cloud, well, the impact could be that you can't read your data. There are mechanisms to minimize this impact, and usually there are tiering policies to offload data to the cloud that help you to minimize the need of data. For example, you are not tiering active data, of course, but you are tiering data that you are not reading often, like maybe that you didn't read for the last 3 or 6 months, so that you are sure that if you are going to read it again, it's not a vital information, and you can wait for the link to come up again. The other thing is that you can use object storage for other purposes, like offloading, for example, a snapshot, for example. And in this case, you know, the impact on production is less relevant, because even if you need to access to a snapshot and there is a delay, okay, it could be a problem, but it doesn't impact the real data that users are accessing at that moment. So there are, you know, always design consideration when you adopt these features, but actually the benefit in terms of dollar per gigabyte could be quite interesting. So Bram, there are also a couple of questions for you, if I am not wrong, right?
Yeah, correct. I just received one question coming from the audience about searchability and the response time. So, yeah, good question. So the key here is that many file systems are using what they call a tree walk. A tree walk just starts with the highest level of authority within the tree, and then the system has to crawl through all the data to report back to any tool or to respond to the user request. Qumulo has designed something differently in this area. So we are not doing any tree walks anymore. So we separate the file metadata when it's been written or accessed. So we separate it from the real content, and that gives us the ability to provide quicker access to the data. So, for example, if you have an attack on ransomware, let's say the main default defense is always doing snapshotting, but snapshotting is something what is coming, is your last resort. We can also detect already, based on the real-time information, we can already detect anomalies when they occur. And if you have a good ransomware solution, you can already apply immediately, so real time, also your response. Another question that I have received is regarding platform interoperability. Yeah, that's an interesting topic also. This solution provides the ability to change your platform. So if you, in a normal scale-up system, you probably will use that economically for 3 to 5 years. This solution will help you out on that one, that you can interchange the nodes during the life cycle of the whole solution. So that doesn't mean that you have to change the whole configuration of part of the configurations over the lifespan for 3 to 5 years. You basically can extend it to 10 years if you want to, because it's entirely based on x86 nodes. Yeah, that's the question that I have got so far.
Thank you very much. And so this is the last slide where we just wrap up this session. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. The webinar will be soon available through Arrow's system, so for on-demand consumption. If you want to keep the conversation going, you know how to find me. Just Google my name, Enrico Signoretti, and you will find all my social media links, where you find me, my blogs, and everything on GigaOm. And Bram, where we can find you if the audience wants to keep the conversation going?
So let's say we're based in the Benelux. So your first point of contact could be your counterparts within Arrow, ECS organization in Belgium and Luxembourg, but also for the Netherlands if there are a Dutch audience. And you can always reach out to me on my email name. It's very simple, bram@qumulo.com. So that's, I think, for everyone, easy accessible.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Bram, for joining me today, and bye-bye.
Thank you for the opportunity, and bye-bye.